another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. Today's episode, I can pretty much just promise you, is going to be one of the most unique stories that you've ever heard, because it was for sure one of the most unique stories I've ever heard. We're talking about leadership, but not your everyday leadership conversation. And we're going to talk about some trauma and overcoming trauma. And this one, I think a lot of people can relate to. Whatever the trauma is in your life that you're going through, this will help you get to the other side. My guest before we started recording said he feels his life is magical now. And based on his story, you be the judge if you think he should feel that way. But I can't wait for him to unpack how you too can be in a magical place in your life and your leadership, which will ultimately grow your business. Enough of me babbling. Michael Clegg, welcome to the show and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. Really appreciate it.
So I teased the story. We're going to keep that on the shelf for just a minute, because I want to understand what life was like before trauma. You're a business owner. You've been in business for a while. So tell me about your business life. What was your normal before we go into what disrupted your whole life?
Yeah. So the normal, interestingly enough, I thought I was at a place in life where I was excelling, and I'm the CEO of a staffing company, executive placement firm. I've been in that industry for the better part of 25 years. Do I have to say that out loud? 25 years, which is hard to believe. I feel like I just graduated college, but
that real quick. So Michael said he was 20. He is 25 years old right now. So yeah, go ahead.
That's right. That's right. Times two. So I'm the magical 50. So, life was what I would call now, post-accident, very linear. I was living what I call a default future. I was living in the day-to-day. I was taking things as they came, right? And honestly, in post-accident discovery, I realized that I was being dictated by other people's needs more than my own. And I didn't even know it. By most people's measurement, I would have been deemed, successful in business, successful in life, beautiful wife, 3 awesome kids that sometimes are pains in the butts like kids are, but they're healthy, they're happy, they're in school, they're doing well, they're in sports, they're excelling in the things that they want to do. And that was life, right? 2 dogs and great family and, very positive income. And we did things that we wanted to do. So, I really, really, for all intents and purposes here, was living the American dream. Little did I know I was not living so magically as I see it now. And my hope in sharing my story is that others don't wait for something traumatic to happen for them to no longer live that default future, no longer live in the day-to-day, or as I tell a lot of my clients, the busyness of the business will take you out of the business. And, those that challenge that day-to-day or that linear view, if you will, those that challenge that will make changes in their life. And more importantly, they'll make changes in their mindset, which is, in my opinion, the most important part of making any change or any transformation or becoming what I like to call your future self. So yeah, I was a normal dude with a normal family, definitely had gratitude and felt blessed, but didn't really realize how stuck I was or how stagnant I was. And I didn't even know it.
It's so interesting to me. And, I had this thought the other day, which I feel like will resonate with some, if not all of the listeners. It was Tuesday, and Tuesday for us is garbage day. I was taking the cans down to the curb, And I was like, I just did this yesterday. Like,
Yeah.
what happened between this Tuesday and last Tuesday? I mean, did you feel like that to a certain degree in, a couple years ago even?
Interesting. I didn't. I did not feel that way. Like, honestly, I didn't know I was living that default future.
Mm.
I just I didn't. There wasn't but what I realized is that I had stopped dreaming. And honestly, I even say it in my TED talk, my TEDx, that I lost a decade of my life. And I mean that by saying that I really truly, when I started measuring my path, when I started deeply reflecting and I started journaling and all of these tools that I use post accident, I would have judged as being too woo woo or fluffy prior to the accident. And I'm a believer now because it just brought me these things that, I mean, like I said, I didn't know. I had no idea that I was living a default future. I didn't know that. I think I'd reached, honestly, what is my floor today, I thought was my ceiling then. And honestly, I just stopped dreaming that I could have more, or maybe that I was selfish to want more. And what I've realized is today, post accident, that the more that I want, the more people that I help. And to me, that's a big distinction from where I was living before. I was that default future was about me, was and selfishly me, my family. And don't get me wrong, I still coached high school football then. I love coaching football. It's a hobby and a passion that I really enjoy, and being around, young men and helping them look at life a little differently. And I certainly do that a lot more now than I did before. But just the strategy and the X's and O's of football, I love. I love calling plays. And it's just that everything that comes with that. But still, it was about me. How good of a play was that? Oh, it was a bad play call, and then I could down on myself or whatever it may be. It's just that's what you do when you live in that day to day. When you take the trash out on Tuesday, and then you look back and go, "Holy crap, what did I do the last 7 days?" And so when people say, "Man, I can remember what I did 20 years ago, but I can't remember what I did yesterday," number one sign that you're living a default future, without a shadow of a doubt. And it's something that I've integrated into my leadership development. If you have those thoughts, you are living linearly. You're living in the day to day. So it's a big distinction. And we too have trash day on Tuesdays, by the way. So
Shout out to North Carolina Trash Days, right?
that's right.
Well, you've got my attention because you just called me out, but I volunteered to be called out, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But what changed? We've been teasing everybody. You've been saying accident.
Yeah.
What
So
was it that changed your future?
yeah, so as I mentioned, I coach high school football. So in the spring, we participate in what we call 7-on-7, which is basically a passing league, right? So for those that may not, I'm sure most people are familiar with football, but may not know it. You've got a quarterback and you've got receivers, and it's basically a passing league. So you're throwing the ball around the football field and keeping score. So it's another way for players to continually work on their skills in the off season, and it's competitive and it's fun for the kids. And I was leaving a 7-on-7 tournament, which fortunately we had just won, and beat our arch rivals, local rivals, ironically, that we hadn't beaten in 7 years. And I was driving on the interstate one evening, and that leaving the tournament, and very dark countryside part of northeast Charlotte, not a lot of lighting, and gentleman jumped off the bridge in front of my truck. I didn't have time to avoid hitting this individual, and unfortunately, and certainly tragically, he didn't survive. And the obviously that in and of itself was awful. I mean, I would not wish that moment. I mean, in that moment, I mean, I didn't know. You want to talk about life flashing before your eyes. I mean, it was like I knew what I had hit because I saw the individual, and I think when they jumped and realized they hit the road, that didn't kill themselves. I saw him turn and look at me, and in that split second, and So I knew it wasn't an animal. It was, wasn't exactly easy to make out, but you can tell the difference between an animal and a human being, even with it being as dark as it was. And when my headlights got up on it, it was too late to do anything. And, my life changed forever in that moment. And, to kind of fast forward the accident piece itself, because the TEDx is about the accident and the recovery. But the things that really about the accident, about the individual itself, like I really tried to find out who it was, like their life story. Obviously they were, successfully committing suicide, but why? Right? Like in part of my struggle and challenge post accident was I couldn't find out anything. I didn't have a name. I continued to call, local police and that were there to find out anything I could. Was this person a dad? It was a, middle age, roughly. I would guess between 40 and 50 years of age, in that range. But I didn't know anything about it. And that bothered me. Like, we're in that entire night, laying in bed, and obviously I didn't get a ton of sleep because I was so when you're adrenaline, you can imagine it's tough to go to sleep. But when I finally did, I think I slept for like 20 hours straight, maybe even longer than that. But not knowing anything about the person or why they did that, and was really a struggle. And I don't know. And even my wife was like, why are you thinking of that? I was like, I don't know. I have no idea. I've never been through this before. So I don't know why I'm thinking about that. I don't know why I'm thinking about anything. But it bothered me that I knew nothing about this individual or their life story or why they did what they did. And that was outside of the images of the actual accident scene, which, as I say in my talk, those are no images any human being should ever have to see or experience. It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's an unbelievable story. And that's, it's one thing to be in a car accident with another car. I think a lot of people have been there, but that is horrific. I can't put myself there. I wouldn't want to put myself in that situation, to be completely honest with you. But obviously it's got to be scarring. And real quick, do you have access to the TEDx talk? Like, can we link that below in the description for anybody who wants to watch it?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So we'll make sure that's down there if you want to watch Michael's talk. So you open the story loop, right? Of who is this person? What just happened? Did you ever find closure to that? Like, did you get any information, or where did that propel you over the next few months?
Yeah. I still to this day, I don't know the individual's name. All I know is that they wore a gray hooded tracksuit that night. And, as I say in the talk, shoes were scattered across the road. One sock was half full and the other sock was missing. And that is about the extent of what I learned. I haven't been searching since, last year. I just stopped because at this point there was no other avenues for me to take. I'd already spoken to the local police, who were the local jurisdiction on that scene. Because I spent almost 5 hours that night. Obviously the interstate around Charlotte was shut down. And to me, I'm glad I left a few minutes earlier, because if you think about it, all the kids that played for me would have been on that road. And my son is one of those players. So I cannot imagine that happening to one of the kids. Now, I was very fortunate that I have a large truck, and so it did no damage to my truck. But I can imagine if it would have been a car that would have struck first, it could have done significant damage. And part of the frustration about that too was, had I arrived a half a second sooner, probably would have gone through my windshield, and I likely would not have survived. And I actually had a passenger, and that's not in the TED talk because TED is very restrictive on, and they give you this, guidelines of what you can and can't say. And they were like, there's no reason to introduce another character, so please leave that out. But, I had a passenger that could have been negatively impacted as well. And certainly was there, witnessed it. Fortunately, she was looking down at her phone and so didn't actually see it happen, but, heard it, felt it, and then heard me. But yeah, I mean, it's I've never learned, but I also, like I said, I stopped looking. And at this point, I mean, I think when I talk about it, I'd still like to know, like, was he a dad? Clearly he was somebody's son, but that's all I know. And what I really started, like my takeaway from that itself was, if I can create a story or craft a story, I mean, the story is what it is. It happened to me. But if I can reframe what happened to me and develop that into a learning opportunity for other people, as I said in my talk, like if I could have gone and been up on that bridge before the individual jumped and helped that person understand, that they can find their future self, and whatever trauma their experience or pain that they're going through, they can get past that. And so that's what I was able to do. And that's what I've done, is I started dreaming about, becoming my future self and whatever that entailed. And those things came to me through journaling. They came to me through images that I had. I mean, I start my talk about being an 8-year-old kid, right? And remembering that I wanted to speak in front of large audiences. I wasn't a speaker. I never thought. I was scared to death that I was a communications major in college. Like, how in the hell am I going to be a professional speaker when I was scared to stand in front of a classroom of 20 people and speak, right? But I'd forgotten those things of being a little kid. And you think about that as a 50-year-old and 49 at the time, how much time I wasted because I was living that default future. How much time I wasted when I could have been working on becoming a professional speaker, working on telling the story. So one of those things that I have learned is to reframe the past, not that it happened to me, but that it happened for me. And that's not to diminish the life of the individual that was tragically lost on that night. I almost see it as, let me find a way to honor that individual so that others that are in the same position as he was before he decided to jump, maybe they've learned something from me that causes them to think twice about doing that. And, as we were saying, pre-recording, I did a TikTok promo. We just created this little promo video that my marketing people had me do, just to get people enticed to the story. And it's awesome, by the way. But I put it on TikTok, and I'm not a TikToker, but I can fall in that rabbit hole like anybody else, of course, watching cool videos. But I posted it, and I got like 40,000 views in like the first few days. And it's not about the vanity metrics. It's about the messages that I've received from people that watched that promo and then have gone and since watched, my TEDx. And those messages are just amazing and unbelievable, and just lift me to a place that I never imagined that I would be. And not because, hey, look at me, this is great for me. Not about that at all. But, this story is a crazy story that, one, catches people's attention because it is so unusual. But two, like, I'm becoming my future self. And I think that's going to give me the ability to give back to more people. And so while most people may not have individuals jumping off of bridges in front of them, I learned by a fellow TEDx that I spoke with that day that I gave my TEDx. And in her talk, she talks about 70% of adults will experience some form of trauma at some point in their life. I mean, you think about that in your room with 10 people, 7 of them are going to experience or have experienced significant trauma. And I'm not talking about, we talked about stubbing your toe earlier. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about trauma. And I'm not going to be too judgy on how you measure that. I'm not a PhD. It's not my area of expertise, but and that's awful to think about. And that will impact people negatively if they cannot reframe that. So I'm not who I'm going to be yet. I'm still in the beginning phases of becoming that professional speaker and sharing this message and creating this leadership development platform and teaching people that they have to improve themselves before they become great leaders. And that's entirely new because of the accident, because of the things that I've experienced. And I've got a goal of humanizing 100,000 conscious leaders. And I hope once I achieve the 100,000, that it goes to 200,000, that goes to 1 million, that goes to 10 million and beyond. And that's going to be my life mission. And I think most of us don't have a life mission. And it took me 50 years to figure out mine. So if I can help people in their 20s and 30s or even sooner find and identify that life mission, then it's well worth it for me.
I wholeheartely agree with that. The stat of 7 out of 10 really strikes me though, because that's, you have employees, or you're in a team, you're in a conference with other leaders, and 7 out of 10 of these leaders have trauma and are not showing up as their best selves, not able to help others and impact other lives positively. So I'm going to put your website on the screen for those of you watching. Listening, it's down in the show notes. It's in the show notes and description everywhere. There's so much that you can teach people on how to overcome the trauma. I just want to hear the picture of from March of 23 to now and then beyond, building your future self. Like you say, I mean, what is it like, assuming somebody is experiencing something to the degree of what you went through and they're not their whole selves? On the other side of this, I said, you mentioned you were magical now. What is it like? What is your ability to lead? What is your level of fulfillment in life? And I mean, how are you going to take this to the next level in your own life and then also impact everyone in your personal circle with it as well? Because I think that's what people miss when you said you make it selfish, like you're living a selfish life. Mm-hmm. If you are your whole self, you can give back to those around you. If you're selfish, you can't. So, what's the biggest outcome for you in terms of your leadership?
Yeah, that story's still being written, truthfully. So I have reorganized my staffing business, and treating that very differently than I did prior. And I'm proving that, because most people they hear the whole conscious leadership and they hear, oh gosh, here we go again with all that soft stuff. And I get that a lot. Trust me, I do get that a lot. And that soft spot's going to be the difference from, growing exponentially, because the world that we live in today is very different. I mean, we have business and work and even school, the school systems, we know this, and I don't want to get too deep, go down that rabbit hole, but for 200 years, we're living this industrialized style of how we, how things are structured, right? I mean, schools haven't changed in how long? Ever. And, from a business perspective, people are coming, those leaders, those employees, those 7 out of 10 are coming to work with their challenges. And we know, based on all of the data that Gallup, that they do their annual surveys, and they actually just released last week, the 2024, the most recent updates, and engagement isn't going up. So if you're an entrepreneur or you're a business, and I'm sure, and I have said it before, I'm struggling to find good people. How many times have you heard that? That's because you're not offering something good and great to those people to be attracted to your organization. And it's really, truly is being intentional. And I'll use this word, vulnerable, and being yourself, being your authentic self. I've used all of the key buzzwords in self-development in one 30-second loop. So that may not be what you want to use for the trailer of this one.
Keep that out of the
true, right? It's true. As much as those words drive me crazy, the meaning and the action of those words is so healthy, one. And more importantly, it is what people are attracted to. And so as I've started telling this story And I didn't tell it for a long time. And in fact, if I wouldn't have started becoming a future self and identifying that I want to be a professional speaker, I hired, my speaking coach in December of 2023. After I decided roughly October, November timeframe, I was like, I got to get out of this. I am like in the lowest of the lows. I'm a model for my kids. I'm a model for my players that I coach high school football. I'm a model for my employees. I'm this guy who's teaching people leadership development. And I don't even want to get out of bed. Like, I didn't want to get out of bed. And so I said, okay, I joined a mastermind group with Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Strongly recommend every single one of his books. And that's where I was telling Brandon, for the listeners earlier, that, it was his teachings about becoming your future self and transformation that pulled me out of the hole that the accident put me in. And when I started journaling and realized I want to speak in front of large audiences, I want to make a difference in people's lives, I'm going to do that. And Dr. Hardy says, what would have to be true in order for you to achieve that? And so I'm like writing all of these things down. And the thing that jumped out at me was, you need a speaking coach. You need someone that has already done what you want to do and learn from them. So I hire a speaking coach within 2 weeks, and I give him my goals that I wanted to tell this story on a TEDx stage within 5 years, right? Within 2 weeks, he sends me this application for this TED Talk that I ended up getting, and nobody gets their first TED Talk. Very few get that. I was blown away when it happened, but I think the unusualness of the story probably helped that. But I mean, think about it. Just by taking the steps of becoming my future self, what I said I wanted within 5 years, it happened within 5 months. And things get accelerated when you start identifying like new paths. I mean, even in our brains, these neural pathways, they get created. It's like these new branches off of a tree. And that's how we get out of our comfort zone. And there's so many amazing things around that. And that's where the magic comes. Like, it wasn't about getting out of bed any longer. It was, I'm so excited for tomorrow. I don't want to go to sleep, right? I want to get going. And I'm certainly not recommending no sleep. I mean, recovery is one of the greatest things we can do, certainly. But it's just that level of excitement, that level of energy that, when I reframed what happened to me, and I reframed that accident didn't happen to me, it happened for me. And I don't mean that to sound selfish. I don't mean that to sound insensitive for the individual that lost his life, but I was there for a reason, right? And it is my life goal to figure out what that reason is. And journaling and doing deep reflections on my past and really truly dreaming bigger than I've ever dreamed and creating impossible goals. And like, it's insane what's happening. So I wish I could answer your question on what tomorrow looks like. I'm still creating it. And you know what? I will probably always be creating, because my goal is to continually raise my floor. And which you raise your floor, your ceiling's moving too, right? And it's not because I need it. It's because I want it. And you know what? It's okay to want it. And I think so many people want things, and maybe due to childhood trauma or due to, their upbringing or things that they've learned or people that they hang out with, that you shouldn't want things. BS. When we want and I achieve, I help so many more people than if I'm not wanting. And so, that was a little bit of a self-limiting belief that I was telling myself, that I shouldn't want more. And I will never, ever say that again. Not only do I want more, I want the world, and I want to bring so many people along with me. So it sounds really Pollyanna and cliche. I get that. And for some people, they might tune out hearing that stuff. But I promise, if you follow that journey and you follow that path, you will create magic for yourself. And I am going to scream that from the rooftops as long as I live.
I love it. I love the mindset. And you're not saying you want mansions and Ferraris, and you want to impact the world and change people's lives and save lives. Yeah. And I think that's perfectly okay to want. And if more people wanted that, the world would be a better place. So thank you for that. But Michael, I love to end these episodes with a question from you to the listener. And And you hinted at one. I'm curious if you're going to say it or not, but we believe that powerful questions get powerful answers. And I want to know, in the context of this conversation, in the context of creating your future self and becoming that better version of you, raising your floor, what's the powerful question you want the listener to ask themselves to get there?
You gave me goosebumps, truthfully, because I ended my TEDx talk with 3 questions, and I won't give all 3 away because I'll let people go and watch the talk. That's the shameful plug, I guess. I think I'll go with this one. To become your future self, and it doesn't matter what it is. Truly, does not matter. Dream big, dream impossible. I get a little emotional thinking about it, honestly, for a couple of reasons. One, I knew that my TED talk was almost finished, and I felt like I nailed it. And so there was a level of rejoice when I was talking and asking these questions. And then 2, I think about them all the time. If you knew that you could become your future self, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what it is. What would you change today? What would you change about your life? And if you knew, right, that you couldn't fail, you knew that you couldn't fail, and you had unlimited resources to make it happen, what would your future self be? And I truly mean that question. And I hope they write that question down. And it doesn't matter what, but if they knew that they couldn't fail, they had unlimited resources, what would their future self be? And I think when you answer that honestly, and you don't even have to share that with anyone initially, but write it down. If whatever your response is and whatever you write down, go for it. Don't let the day-to-day hold you back. Don't let the living that default future. And that doesn't mean you have to go out and quit your job tomorrow. There is, will require structure and planning and those types of things, but commit to it first. Don't wait until you feel like you have the capability to do it. Don't wait until you have the confidence to do it. That's flipping the paradigm upside down. Commit to it. What you commit to, the universe will help and conspire to make it happen for you. And I truly believe that. And I'm not some woo-woo dude that really falls in and buys that. I'm living it, and it's the God's honest truth. So that's the question I would ask.
That's amazing. I appreciate those questions. I appreciate you being here. This was a phenomenal interview.
Awesome, man. Thank you for your time, and you're doing great work. Keep it up.
Thank you. For those of you watching and listening, wherever you are, I told you, I delivered. That was an awesome episode. I had no part in it. Michael was amazing. Thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe. We want to see you back tomorrow on the next episode of Harmonious at Lunch. We want to help you build a more harmonious business and life. That's what we're all about here. We'll see you tomorrow.